Hey there, a beatdown of the Panthers by the backup quarterback, Jayden Daniels injury, the Bears preview, and much, much more. Let's have a podcast. Hey there, good evening. Welcome to Commander's Gridiron. I'm your host, Steve Lockman, where we talk all things on and off the field about our beloved Washington Commanders. And as you saw in the quick preview, riding that good high of another victory Monday. Well, now it's victory Tuesday, carried into the week. Lost our starting quarterback, which we're going to have an update for tonight as well, going into the Bears week. We're going to preview that game. A couple other little tidbits as we roll out the show. But as always, we usually talk about things on and off the field. And before we get started, feel free to hit that comment section, ask a question, throw a comment in there. We love the interaction from everybody, whether you're watching us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, or Twitch. Give us a comment, give us a question, give us some interaction. Love to answer some questions, have some banner back and forth. We're going to be talking trash about some other NFC East teams tonight as well. So it's time to get it started. As our good buddy Paul Spencer says, even though he's a Cowboys fan, let's go. Time to raise hell. That's right. Our beloved Commanders are on a hot streak. And, whether it's on the field or off the field, they continue to do that. So let's hit some off the field stuff real quick. First off, just kind of more of a formality, so to speak. The Harris Blitzer Sports and Entertainment Group, actually partnered up with Campbell's. So yes, that is the Campbell's soup, right? The people that come up with the chunky soup commercials that you see all the NFL guys doing here and there. They actually partnered up with the Harris Group and announced basically a new marketing partnership that's going to span all four sports teams, conglomerates of the Harris Blitzer Group, right? So what does that mean? Not exactly sure, whether it's just marketing, whether it's going to be now that you're going to start seeing some of like Campbell's foods in the stadiums, whether that's just DC. But keep in mind that the Harris Group also does the 76ers out of Philadelphia, the basketball team, the New Jersey Devils for the NHL hockey team. And this is also going to apply to Joe Gibbs Racing, of which they own a minority stake in, of the NASCAR team under former Redskins head coach Joe Gibbs. The other big news that came off the field this week for the Washington Commanders, as many people knew, they kind of dubbed it alumni weekend, so to speak. But, and usually that's where they honor players that come back from the team of the 70s, the teams of the 80s, and, et cetera, right? But the big reason that they had alumni weekend was much long overdue retirement of the number 28 from Darrell Green. Probably one of my favorite all-time Redskin players growing up. Loved him. Probably my favorite player defensively for the Redskins. Throw in Art Monk offensively, but you kind of get the picture, right? But Sunday was a special weekend for the Pro Football Hall of Famer Darrell Green. Former Washington Redskins cornerback received actually a key to the city from DC Mario Bowser on Saturday. Had his number 28 retired by the team on Sunday. Green played 20 years for the Burgundy and Gold, largely stayed away from the team for the last decade, probably, under former owner Daniel Snyder. But once that team got sold and you saw the new ownership come in, the people of that ownership group come in, and, them wanting to have the alumni more involved, Josh Harris and company made it a priority that, look, we need to get the alumni involved. We need to start doing stuff that should have been done a long time ago. And, oh, by the way, that included retiring number 28 of Darrell Green. And that was one of the first things that new ownership did, was invite Green back to the fold and treat him accordingly. So on Sunday, Green spoke to Washington fans about, the glory days of the Washington Redskins, and let's be honest, the 3 Super Bowl wins were under the Washington Redskins. Yes, they're the Washington Commanders now. We get it, blah, 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 right? We've talked about that to nauseum. But, he wanted to express the feelings and the aura of being in the glory days of the burgundy and gold, and the fact that, the franchise is doing very well right now, moving forward, leaps and bounds. And hey, there's only one way to go, and that's up. So Darrell Green in one of part of his ceremony speech, so to say, at halftime, said the following quote: "You did not get to drink the good wine. I'm sorry. I want to challenge all of you to become those diehard fans that ride with us as we are coming back to the promised land." And, it's absolutely true, because the last time that Washington won a Super Bowl was in 1991-92 season. That was 33 years ago, for those of you trying to do some quick math. Yes, a long time ago. Green was in his ninth NFL season during that run and would play 11 more before retiring after the 2002 season. Green believes that the best is yet to come for the Commanders, that he's now being a part of and being so proud about. So real quick, what did Darrell Green do? A lot of people know Darrell Green. Hey, look, he was that one team player his whole career from 1983 to 2002. Was drafted in the first round of that 1983 draft at pick number 28 out of Texas A&I. And, look, he amassed such a career as cornerback, one of the shorter guys at cornerback, but one of the speediest, right? Probably known as one of the fastest men in the NFL. I think he carried that title for probably at least 5 to 6 years out of that career. Racked up as a 2-time Super Bowl champion, 1996 NFL Man of the Year, 4-time first team All-Pro, 86, 87, 90, and 91. Basically, those out of those 4 years, it's just interesting to note that both of those sets were back-to-back consecutive years. 7-time Pro Bowl, All-Rookie team in 1983, part of the NFL 1990s All-Decade team, part of the NFL 100th Anniversary All-Time team in the 90, as part of 90 Greatest Redskins, also in the Washington Ring of Fame, and now has his number 28 retired in Landover. So it's great to see. Great to see. And as we saw, what better way to have, as they were calling it, Darrell Green Day, than to go out and just put a show on the field, right? And it's kind of what they did. But I got to be honest with you, it wasn't looking very pretty from the opening kickoff, right? Look, we know the Panthers are horrendously bad. And, they gave away a bunch of multiple first round picks when they were doing trades and, to get Bryce Young as quarterback, who's no longer starting right now. Andy Dalton's been under center for the last 3 games, has given some life to the Carolina Panthers, has been able to at least move the ball down the field. Usually there's mistakes somewhere around that come back to haunt them. And, even though they have been, I don't want to say racking up points, but putting up enough to be competitive, the 15 to 20, 25 points per game under Dalton, they usually self-destruct, whether it's interceptions, whether it's fumbles, whether it's penalties, you name it, collectively puts them together, puts them in a hole, right? So Carolina comes into the game at 1-5. Washington was going into the game at 4-2. Look, it was actually one of the bigger spreads. I think it was actually one of the biggest spreads of the week in the NFL for week 7. Washington went into the game at, I think it was plus 9.5, which is actually pretty big for them and pretty big for a spread in general. But, they didn't disappoint, right? But Carolina got the ball to start the game. And, they actually put a really good drive together. I think Dalton was somewhere around like 2 for 4 with a bunch of yards, couple good runs, couple good chunks, right? Carolina was actually mounting the drive. But no, got to be denied at Washington's 25-yard line when Dante Fowler, who basically came over in free agency from Dallas along with defensive coordinator Joe Witt, picks off Andy Dalton and runs 67 yards to pay dirt to put the Commanders up 7-0. So it'll be interesting to see, as the game progresses, look, we started off hot. We got the pick 6, but then you turn around and give Carolina the ball right back, right? Defense, put the defense right back on the field. And they put a decent little drive together to go down the field and kind of did what they did. Then they ended up punting, and then throw in some penalties, throw in some other miscues, and it's kind of Carolina football. Get the drift? However, the big news of the game after the first, I guess at the end of the first drive, Washington quarterback Jayden Daniels takes a super hard hit to the ribs. Look, it's part of the JD style, right? JD is a mobile quarterback. JD uses his legs. JD's not afraid to run. Cliff Kingsbury, the offensive coordinator, puts designed runs into Washington's playbook to mix things up. They had a great rushing game. They knew they were going to do that. Pound the ball, pound the ball, pound the ball. Oh, by the way, throw in a little JD run, mix it up. Oh, by the way, the run. It's going to open up some easy passing for JD. And that's what it did on the first drive. However, like I said, he took a big hit to the ribs, kicked him out of the game. Then the next thing that comes to mind is, holy cow, your star rookie quarterback who's basically pushed this team and the offense on his shoulders so far the entire season is going to be out for the game. Now, it wasn't 100% definite that he was going to be out of the game, but look, when he's not coming back in 2 to 3 plays later, they pop up that beautiful blue medical tent on the sideline. Things don't necessarily end up being too good when you go into the tent, come out of the tent. Follow me so far? All right, let's keep going. So, what does that mean? That means that backup quarterback Marcus Mariota comes in. Mariota might sound like a familiar name to a lot of people, and in fact, he has. He's been a little journeyman around the NFL. I think we're like his 4th or 5th team. Hasn't quite found the right system, the right fit for him. But as you will see with this game, Washington probably is the best fit. And oh my goodness, the firestorm that started when Marcus Mariota came into the game to play quarterback in place of Jayden Daniels in the middle, at basically the beginning of the first quarter of this, highly, what was basically going to be a gimme, let's call it a gimme win, right, against the Carolina Panthers. Social people on social media are like, oh my God, there goes the game. We're losing, Mariota can't throw, blah, 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 blah. Mariota was a former Heisman Trophy winner coming out of Oregon. There's a reason he was, folks. And let me tell you, so you kind of figured that even with Mariota as quarterback, Washington would probably still put up around 15, 17, maybe 20 points at the end, right? Oh, no. Let me tell you, with Mariota at quarterback and Cliff Kingsbury and that awesome, potent running combination of B-Rob and Eckler, throw in a little McNichols just for some extra sugar on top, and we amassed 40 points to finish out with a 40-7 victory. Mariota came in and placed Jayden Daniels, ended up going 18 for 23 for 205 yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and 0 fumbles. Also had 11 rushes for 34 yards. So, you definitely saw a difference in the two styles of quarterback, right? Mariota was more of a pocket passer. Mariota was actually took longer in his read progressions. You definitely saw that. Wasn't definitely as fast in reading the progressions on the field, automatically going to a check down or whatever. You saw him kind of eluding a little bit, some defenders every now and then, stepping up into the pocket, making some throws. Every once in a while, escape the pocket or the pocket collapses and he's got to get out, hit some awesome throws on the run, throwing dimes around, kind of just like JD was, and takes our team to the promised land. But let's break down the game a little bit more, right? I just gave you the stats for Marcus Mariota. And as you see, it was as lopsided as the score was. Andy Dalton only finished 11 out of 16 for 93 yards and 2 interceptions. One of them was the pick six in the first drive to Dante Fowler. And it's actually kind of interesting because, even though Canales, the head coach of Carolina, flipped quarterbacks about 3 games ago, going from Bryce Young to Andy Dalton. Bryce Young actually came in the second half and played a good portion of that. I don't know if that was to try and spark Carolina or just more of to say, hey, look, we know we're not winning this game because the score was 27-0 at halftime. And it's just a matter of trying to get Bryce Young some reps. Not 100% sure, but Dalton didn't play the whole game. Chuba Hubbard, running back for Carolina, had 52 yards and 1 touchdown. Their only score of the game for Carolina. B-Rob, the bruising running back, led Washington rushers with 12 carries for 71 yards and 1 touchdown. And our boy, oh, sweet, scary Terry, had 6 receptions for just shy of 100 yards, coming in at 98. So, hey, look, as we said, we had that pick six, that great pick six, 67-yard interception return for a touchdown by Dante Fowler, former Cowboy, who's actually been working out pretty good for us. We're going to get into that in a second with a quick stat about him and some of his recovery from that initial season starting injury that he had. Opened up the second quarter with a Brian Robinson 8-yard touchdown run. Followed that up with a 49-yard Austin Seibert field goal. Seibert's been money pretty much all year for us. We're going to get into him a little bit as well. In one of the team records that he actually tied with former NFL MVP Mark Mosley. Yes, NFL MVP kicker. Woo, wow, think about that one for a hot minute, right? One of the big things for our game, it was actually kind of interesting. I was listening to the majority of the first half on the radio. I was on my way home from an event, and Carolina punted the ball to Washington just before the halftime in the second quarter. It was super interesting that even the radio crew calling the game, and watching people on social media and the NFL experts and everything thought that Washington would either kind of just run the clock out, maybe get the ball down into field goal position, and kind of just go from the 20 to nothing, maybe make it 23, whatever. Mariota orchestrates a beautiful 92-yard drive to cap it off with a 12-yard touchdown pass to Zach Ertz. And then, basically they don't really let off. Cliff Kingsbury keeps going, and then in the second half, we have a Ben Sinnott, rookie tight end, gets a 3-yard touchdown pass from Mariota. Another 31-yard field goal by Seibert. Washington does give up the only score for Panthers on that 4-yard touchdown run by Hubbard. And then Seibert does what he does again with another 29-yard field goal. Washington amassed 421 total yards, kind of where we are, right around that average, 200, 250 yards passing. And then that big stat that we pull out every week, 214 yards rushing for the Commanders. What a beautiful number, right? Gotta love it. Gotta love it. Look, we were 50% on third downs, which is good. Not necessarily where we usually are with Jayden Daniels in there. We're a little bit higher, but 50%, I'll take it. Didn't have to go for it all on fourth down. Ran 63 total plays. Probably one of the biggest things. And, you kind of saw it because we had some initial false start penalties when Mariota came into the game. And, when you have a QB who's been taking the number one team snaps, pretty much the bulk of training camp, preseason, and then basically almost every snap of the game, every game so far in this NFL season, you throw another guy in there who has a different cadence, has a different voice tone, et cetera, et cetera. You think that one of two things are going to happen. Either A, more sacks, or B, more false start penalties. So, yes, we did have 2 or 3 false start penalties kind of because the offensive line and the offense were trying to mesh together with that new quarterback. But we only gave up 1 sack in the game. So that's basically pretty awesome, right? No fumbles, no interceptions, dominated the time of possession at 35 minutes. So basically collectively, this came down to, basically being a game that wasn't necessarily a trap game for us, as many people dubbed it. But, Washington over the last couple of years has always had a big struggle with winning the games that we needed to win against trash teams, right? We'd go in and play down to a team's level. You name the team, that's how we did. And not only did we come in and play basically a minor league team in Carolina, but we did what we needed to do and just flat out trounced them, right? So before we get into some of the rankings of, in fact, the tidbits and game notes, as I call it for all the games, let's talk about the big news, right? The big news was Jayden Daniels. And Jayden Daniels basically went into the tent, came back out. He was out on the sidelines for probably like 2 to 3 minutes of the game. Then they took him back into the locker room for initial x-rays and MRIs and all that good stuff. I kind of figured that was going to happen, right? With JD. And, knowing that we went into halftime with a 27-0 lead, I kind of thought two things. Either one, they're going to take Jayden Daniels and basically hold him out the rest of the game, which he ended up doing because we were winning so big against Carolina. Like, why risk that, right? Or B, it was something that was going to be that serious that warranted him not coming back into the game. So you didn't get any warm and fuzzies, got a little worried when, look, as Michael says, hey, how bad is Daniels' injury? Adam chimes in too. Will Daniels play on Sunday against the Bears? So let's talk about it, right? Jayden's initial MRIs and X-rays yesterday were negative for any fractures, punctured lungs, all that good stuff, right? Basically comes out as like contusions of the ribs and all that good stuff. His mom actually tweeted, who's actually, I guess, his agent or one of his agents, so to speak, actually tweeted out the other night, quote, "He's fine," by Jayden's mom, which is huge news for us. Now, that was obviously coming from, what is he telling her? Hey, look, Ma, I'm great, right? I can play. But the team actually, has to jump through the hoops, has to cross their T's and dot their I's, to make sure that this guy is good. So throughout yesterday, JD underwent more tests, more scans, more MRIs. It was released this morning and around lunchtime that all those scans and tests were negative. So basically, sore ribs, no fractures, some bruising, et cetera, et cetera. Now, the big question is going to be, and DQ is not going to release this yet. I would not be surprised if DQ and Kingsbury basically keep this one close to the chest, no pun intended, since we're talking about JD, until like Friday or Saturday about the official status of JD. So what does that mean? That means that, basically Mariota today, tomorrow, and Thursday is easily going to work in with the number ones, right? We know that. How much JD works in with the number ones will remain to be seen. I didn't see anything today from the team insiders about practice. Usually Tuesdays are a day off, but they're still doing film work. JD's usually in there doing his virtual stuff and stuff like that, game planning, basically non-contact practice, right? So it'll be super interesting to see if he goes Sunday. Game is going to be Sunday afternoon at 4:25 against the Bears. Oh, by the way, against the number one overall pick in Caleb Williams at quarterback. So it's kind of like a big matchup for us, right? So I think it's truly going to be a game time decision. If JD can throw, rotate, do all the movements with little to minimal to no discomfort, JD is going to be a go. Absolutely hands down. However, I would not be surprised if, in fact, they hold JD 1 week, throw Mariota in, use Driscoll as the backup, and go play the Bears, right? You saw the proficiency that Mariota did with the offense under Kingsbury's system or in Kingsbury's system this past Sunday. So I think, the opportunity and the plausibility of Mariota doing it again on Sunday is probably 50-50. Let's call it 50-50 right now. I think as we go each day and you see a little bit more with no negative reporting, no setbacks, some progression, I think that number is slightly going to change, right? So that by the time you get to Friday and Saturday, you're going to be 80-20 JD, right? Official injury report, obviously doesn't have him as like questionable, doubtful, any of the bad shit that you see on the weekly NFL injury report. First injury report isn't going to come out until tomorrow for NFL teams. So it'll be interesting to see, if how JD's listed on the injury report for practice tomorrow. And then, of course, kind of following that, obviously, through the week. And I honestly feel that, for those of you betting folks out there, the sports books are going to be watching this pretty hard to see if and when JD is officially going to be announced as a starter, or whether Mariota is going to go again. So a couple things jumped out at you from this game. This game was all about defense. And, the game was, so far, our team has been Swiss cheese in secondary. We've been okay at stopping the run, haven't really been able to put a total team effort in, right? And it was super funny because I was watching a presser by defensive coordinator Joe Witt, former Dallas Cowboy defensive coordinator, who I can only sit here and think that, Paul Spencer and Dave Yarnell hope would still be with Dallas to help them in their dismal time out there in the Big D, but we got them and we're happy we did. He had a presser and somebody was asking, why or what it was like, with the defense not having a single interception through the first 5 weeks of the NFL season. And Joe Witt says, quote, "I don't know if we've been 5 games without an interception my whole career. So apparently I'm not doing good enough of a job coaching these guys up. We have to produce the ball more." And that was before the Carolina game. So obviously, what do? Go into Carolina, 2 interceptions, bunch of sacks, basically wrecking mayhem, right? So it's been 2 weeks since Joe Witt was asked that in his presser, basically like a week and a half ago, about the defense not recording a single interception. Since then, the Commanders have recorded 3 interceptions, added 3 sacks, and a fumble recovery. Great response from the guys being coached up by the defensive coordinator. So what does that mean for Carolina, or for the Carolina game? Joe Witt's defense against Carolina only allowed 7 points, 2 interceptions, one of which was a pick six by Dante Fowler, 5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, and 180 yards total allowed. Booyah, right? Speaking of Fowler, and let's just rub it in for our Dallas Cowboy fans that may be watching tonight, right? Fowler has more sacks, 4.5 so far this season, than Chase Young and Montez Sweat, who were both traded last year at the trade deadline. Combined, by the way, they both have together 4. Dante Fowler says not playing in the preseason and dealing with that rib injury at the beginning of the season slowed him down at the start of the year. But you know what? He's feeling great. He's been on a tear, and he's ready to go. But, as much as we talk about the defense, you got to give it up for the offense, and especially Cliff Kingsbury. Cliff Kingsbury was so well adapted to calling an offense that fit Mariota, going from JD to Mariota in a matter of a couple plays, that you got to give props where props are due. So for Cliff Kingsbury, it's his second 40 burger of the season, his third time hanging 38 plus points on the year, 4 straight passes up 37-7. Daniels exits, the offense hums to get 40 points total. We went over Mariota's stats earlier, 407 total yards, 7-yard average per play. And what did that result in? Getting McLaurin the ball, getting them often for 98 yards. So, as a group for our Washington Commanders, what does that mean? That we're 5-2 after 7 weeks through the NFL season. We still remain atop the NFC East in first place. We are now second in the NFC, 4th in total offense, 16th in total defense. First, oh my goodness, first in this stat. I can't believe it. First in points per game in the NFL at 31.14 points per game. Second in rushing yards, first in rushing touchdowns, second in total touchdowns, first in third down conversions, and 8th in defensive sacks. What a transformation, right? You look at somebody that going into this season, this team was supposed to be in a rebuild. What did that rebuild mean? That rebuild was supposed to be, let's be honest, 3-4 years. And with the addition of Jayden Daniels at quarterback, some key pickups in free agency, a solid rookie class so far, we're expediting that rebuild, so to speak, right? Nobody thought, holy cow, going into week 8, that we would be 5-2 already. So what did that do? That was good enough to give us number 9 in this week's ESPN Power Rankings by virtue of beating the Panthers 40-7. Our week 7 ranking was number 9 also. So we didn't go up, didn't go down, didn't lose any, kind of held steady, even with losing JD for that game. So, look, Emmanuel Forbes, our first round draft pick last year, who was benched after having kind of a dismal season last year, hard time this year, coming in, coming out, whatever, had the second interception for our defense. He's getting better. Sanders still had a great game as well. Payne showed up, especially with the big injury to Allen being out for the season. Hey, man, it's time. Let's go. Let's go. For those of you for your historic fact of the night, the Commanders are one of only two offenses in the last 24 years to score on at least 60% of their offensive drives through 7 weeks. The other team, the 2000 Rams, the greatest show on turf, the one that went to the Super Bowl and won it. Terry McLaurin leads the NFL in contested catches. Let me repeat that again. Terry McLaurin leads the NFL in contested catches and is catching 70% of his contested targets. Only one drop of the season so far of those contested catches. That's right, Mr. Reliable of 2024 so far for the Washington Commanders. And as we talked about it earlier, and for those of you that don't know, yes, a former Washington Redskin did win NFL MVP as a kicker. But lo and behold, Austin Seibert, the guy who came into our team during week 2 after our abysmal week 1 failed attempt with that kicker and he got cut. Since week 2, Austin Seibert is tied with Mark Moseley for most points in franchise history by a Washington player through week 7, amassing 73 points. So in 6 weeks, not 7, Austin Seibert has now tied Mark Moseley with 73 points in franchise history. Pretty awesome for the new kicker for us. As we said, Terry McLaurin, old Mr. Reliable, Scary Terry, the face of the franchise, the gamer that he is on pace for an 85 catch, 1,100 yard, 9 touchdown season. Can he keep it up? That's going to be the name of the game. Whether we have Marcus, whether we have Jayden throwing the ball, he's going to be seeing time. He's going to be seeing his catches. He's going to be getting his yards. Over his last 5 games, McLaurin is on a 91 catch, 1,200 yard, 13 touchdown pace. Basically, for him, most of those are all career highs. And in this offense with Cliff Kingsbury and the running attack that we have that opens up that passing game, easily should be able to get some career stats for Scary Terry. Sunday's victory against Carolina's 33-point win was the largest margin of victory for the Washington Commanders since week 10 of the 2015 season. That's right, almost 10 years ago have we gone a game to amass that much of a victory margin. One big news that actually came out today before we jump into the second half of our show, just something that we had to touch base on, kind of figuring out, where we're going to throw it in, Jayden Davis, who was actually a first-round draft pick under the Ron Rivera era, coming out of the University of Kentucky. Rivera called him, basically wanted him to be a starter as linebacker going basically week 1 of the draft year going into the following season. Kind of amounted to basically like a project piece, right? Never really felt comfortable at the NFL level, never really grasped the speed and difference and changes from the collegiate level to the NFL level, right? We know college level is hard. We know college level is fast. We know, that they're here. NFL level is up here. So, I think he did really well, but he just didn't make that extra jump. And let's be honest, he wasn't a Peters guy, wasn't a DQ guy, wasn't a Wick guy. So he actually was a healthy scratch 2 weeks ago. Healthy scratch 4 weeks ago, played last week, that kind of deal. So you're kind of wondering what was up. He never showed up on an injury report, and lo and behold, they released him today. So Jayden Davis, gone. They tried to move him up from like a linebacker to an edge rusher where he felt they might be able to maximize him a little bit more. Unfortunately, the experiment didn't work. So they actually picked up another safety in Ben Nickel and a wide receiver in Michael Strachan. Signed them to the practice squad. Jayden Davis' spot gave him that. And they released another guy from the practice squad as well. So no big deal. Real quick, let's take a quick minute to talk about the sponsor here at Out of the Box Sports. And that is Mr. Jason Fine, a.k.a. Attorney Big Al. You can reach Attorney Big Al at 1-800-HURT-123, specializing in motor vehicle accidents, slips and falls, workers' compensation, personal injury claim, 3 convenient office locations throughout Pennsylvania and New Jersey, with one in Philadelphia, one in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, and one in Pittsburgh, PA. If you need legal representation or legal advice, give Jason Fine a call at 1-800-HURT-123. Remember, if you don't win, he doesn't collect. He's always available for all of your legal needs. That's Jason Fine, aka Attorney Big Al. All right. As we move into the second half of tonight's show, one of the things that, before we kind of get into the extra that we kind of do at the end, we got to talk about the upcoming game on Sunday. 4:25 afternoon start against the Chicago Bears. And look, the Bears are coming off the bye week. The Bears are coming off of a 3-game winning streak as well. Started off the season a little shaky. Let's just got to say a little shaky, a lot of shaky, right? Starting 0-2 with that phenomenal offense and defense. But, under some progressive improvement, let's call it that, with Caleb Williams, they've actually put up 3 consecutive wins here to make themselves 4-2. Game's going to be on CBS, and let's break it down a little bit more and talk about Caleb Williams. Usually, I look at the last game that the opponents played the previous week, go over that game, kind of see what they did well, see what they didn't do well. But since the Bears were on the bye, let's dissect Caleb Williams a little bit better, right? Number 1 overall pick in this year's 2024 NFL Draft, 6'1", 215-pound quarterback out of USC, selected by the Bears overall. So far this season, Caleb's numbers aren't super bad, but they're not like super good either, right? Feel me? Let's break it down. He's got a QBR rating so far this year of 46.4, 65% completion percentage, mass 1,300 passing yards, and 9 touchdowns. Doesn't sound too bad, but for a number 1 overall pick with a star-studded offense in Chicago, those numbers should be a lot higher. Completion percentage is about average for that, maybe a little bit higher, up to 70%. Ain't nobody touching JD around 80, 85, right? We know how that rolls. I kind of expected his QBR rating to be a little bit higher. His first 3 games weren't necessarily as good as what people thought, and kind of reflected that on the field. But, he did have the game 3 games ago where he had 4 touchdown passes. I think he had a game where he had 2 before that as well. So he's quickly picking up steam. Versus the NFC, he's 37 of 52, 71% completion percentage for 460 yards, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. So, when you look at that, you got to look, and then you look at kind of like his home away stats and blah, 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 blah. He's doing well. Let's be honest, right? He's got some skilled players. He's got, rookie Rome Odunze as wide receiver. He's got DJ Moore, who torched us on Thursday Night Football last year. And he's got a stout running back as well. So, it'll be interesting to see how their offense pairs up against our defense. If we can kind of go back to that whole, we can keep the opposing rushing attack at 100 yards, give or take, or less, throw in some rushes and a little bit of pass rush and possibly get a couple sacks. If our secondary can play pretty decent, I get it. Look, let's be honest, Carolina is not that good. We've said it 100 times. We'll say it 100 more. But if the defense can play like they did against Carolina, we're going to give the Bears a really good game. So when you break it down, the Bears' last game was actually a 35-16 victory against Jacksonville. Jacksonville is basically like one step above Carolina. So Carolina's probably below Jacksonville, and then Jacksonville is right up top. Jacksonville actually had a good win, yes, on Sunday against New England Patriots. So, take it for what it is. But the Bears won against Carolina. The Bears beat the LA Rams. They lost to Indy. They lost to Houston, respectively, the first 2 weeks of the season. But as I said, their offense is picking it up moving forward. So the keys of the game basically is going to be to limit that rushing attack from the Bears, right? Make Caleb Williams beat you with his arm, make him make the passes, see how good he really is, right? Second thing, Bears have a really good defense. I think they're like in the top 15, 20-ish for rushing attack. So can Cliff Kingsbury and company in our running back group a rushing attack that's going to open up the passing game for whichever quarterback comes in and can lead our offense, right? I feel confident enough that whether it's Jayden Daniels or number two for the offense is going to be pressures. Regardless of which quarterback's playing for DC, we got to limit the sacks. We got to limit the rushes. Our offensive line is meshing pretty well. The injuries aren't too bad. I will say that the rookie left tackle, who's been phenomenal so far this season, was in concussion protocol coming out of Sunday's game. Haven't seen any updates on him to see if he's going to be out this week or if he's going to make it by. And it's you're going to be in, like, it's going to take you almost the entire week to clear. So, like, you won't clear until like Thursday or Friday. So, but even when he went out and they threw Cornelius Lucas in to sub for him, excuse me, he did well the rest of the game against Carolina. I get it. It's Carolina. Putting that pressure on, whole different level where those guys are going to be, right? I think my Wi-Fi is kind of funky. It's showing in full strength, but I see my screen getting blue and going blackout. So as long as you can hear me, you guys can keep seeing me, right? All right, let's keep going. So what do I think is going to happen? I think regardless of our quarterback, we still have the offense. Defense comes together. Our special teams will be good enough that we're going to be able to right? So what are we talking? We're probably talking like 24-20, 24-17, something like that, but it's going to be a DC victory. I don't know why. Just kind of got something in my gut that says, hey, we're going to take care of business. Last year, still on the team to have that, just that gut sour taste from the thrashing we took at home last year. And, look, if we get JD back in time, it's even more of what I think, going 1 versus 2 quarterback. Right now, they're both going to have good careers. They're both going to put up some stellar numbers. But right now, as long as JD gets healthy and is healthy, JD's the better quarterback than Caleb Williams. Redskins are involved in this, and I happened to catch it this afternoon, actually early evening, before we came on the show, that the Hall of Fame cut down list was published this afternoon. Probably published like this morning or something, and I just didn't see it till this afternoon. Why is that important? We're going to talk about it right now. So 31 seniors remain in consideration for the Hall of Fame's class of 2025 after the second reduction vote. So what does that mean? Following a second reduction vote of candidates in the seniors category, 31 former players remain in contention for the Pro Football Hall of Fame's class of 2025, presented by Visual Edge IT. Members of the Hall of Fame Seniors Blue Ribbon Committee produced the list from the 60 names that they had received after the screening committee was done. Each of the 182 former players nominated for election and screened in the opening round of the voting last could have appeared in a professional football game in the 1999 season. The players, 20 offensive and 11 defensive, who remain in consideration for the class of 2025 were listed below. Some names that kind of jump out at you for the seniors list, and I'm not going to list them all because we don't have time, but just some of the ones that popped out. Ken Anderson and Jim Plunkett for quarterbacks, Otis Anderson, Roger Craig for running back, Sterling Sharp, Stanley Morgan, Art Powell, Otis Taylor for wide receiver. Why is this article important? Here's why. Our beloved former Washington 3-time Super Bowl champion, Joe Jacoby, who's been denied the Hall of Fame for many years now, made the next cut. Okay, so it's good positive news. That news needs to be in the Hall of Fame. The only other hog, so to speak, other than the offensive stars like Riggins and Williams and stuff like that are in the Hall of Fame, is Russ Grimm, offensive lineman, former hog. Joe Jacoby's time is now. Put him in the Hall of Fame. So in this step of the process, each committee member votes for 25 players to get to the list that we just went over. The top 25 and all other candidates who tied for 25th advanced to the third phase, the cut down vote to 9 semifinalists. Joe Jacoby actually made it to 9 semifinalists last year. Hopefully he can make it there and then keep going. Those results will be determined in about 3 weeks, the cut down of 9. So hopefully he can survive the next cut down list. And then basically it gets cut down from the 9 in about 3 weeks after that. And then they'll get voted on to select anybody who makes the cut based off the amount of votes given from the Hall of Fame Senior Committee. All right. The other thing, too, that kind of caught my eye, as they made cut day for all 3 classes of the Hall of Fame for 2025, was the 12 coaches that advanced in the selection process for next year's class for the Hall of Fame. So it's kind of the same deal, right? They throw a bunch of old coaches on the list. And the one thing that was kind of interesting, there's a lot of great coaches on this list, but only one coach will be able to be selected to go into the Hall of Fame at a time, which I actually kind of found really interesting. Like, they don't put 2, they don't put 3. It's literally 1. Okay. So list of coaches on the original list of 12 nominees down to 12 was Bill Arnspiger, Tom Coughlin, Jeff Fisher, Alex Gibbs, Mike Holmgren, Chuck Notch, Richie Pettibone, Dan Reeves, Marty Schottenheimer, George Seifert, Mike Shanahan, and Clark Shaughnessy. Now, I was looking at this list and I was like, man, there's 3 coaches right off the bat that coached for the Washington Redskins at some point in time. Now, they made their fame coaching for somebody else, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. But I didn't know it until I was reading the bios, the short little bios that they put with them, that there's actually 4. So Richie Pettibone, who was actually basically Joe Gibbs' right-hand man as defensive coordinator, never really became, he was interim head coach for a hot second in the 90s, but he made the finalist list, the semifinalist list here, more as a defensive coordinator, 3-time Super Bowl winner with Joe Gibbs. Dan Reeves kind of speaks for himself, right? Denver, New York Giants, Atlanta Falcons. Marty Schottenheimer, we know, basically came to fame as Cleveland Browns, Kansas City, but he did coach Washington from 2001. George Seifert, great Super Bowl coach with San Francisco and then with Carolina Panthers. Mike Shanahan got his fame in Denver, actually was the head coach of the Raiders first, then went to Denver for a long time, and then coached Washington from 2010 to 2013. And then the last one, I didn't know this until I read the short bio, but Clark, I know I'm going to butcher his last name, Clark Shaughnessy, actually was the head coach of the Los Angeles Rams for a season or 2 in the late 40s, and then coached the Washington Redskins from 44 to 47. So it'll be interesting to see. Hopefully one of those guys who's got some ties to the Washington Redskins can make it as the coach's nomination to the Hall of Fame for 2025. All right, as we wrap up this show for tonight, one of the things I wanted to look at, and we're going to go over probably as a quick reaction here. We're not going to dive into the nitty gritty and, why I think the way I think or, why this team's doing this or whatever. But we're going to take a quick peek at the Week 8 slate of games for the NFL, starting off with Thursday Night Football. 2 nights from now is going to be the Minnesota Vikings against the LA Rams. And, look, even though Minnesota came off that loss to the Detroit Lions this past Sunday, I just think that Minnesota's got too much for the LA Rams. We're going with the Minnesota Vikings. Early games on Sunday. There are 7 of them, 8 of them. I lost count. Let's talk about them. Break them down. The first one, Baltimore against Cleveland. Cleveland is horrendous. Deshaun Watson's out. Maybe that's a good thing. Cleveland's in a fire sale trying to get rid of guys. Baltimore's got a great offense. Baltimore's got a great defense. Let's take Baltimore. Tennessee against the Lions. Kind of the same thing, just backwards, right? The Lions are on a roll under MCDC. So let's pick the Lions. Colts against the Texans. CJ Stroud had one of his worst games of his professional career this past Sunday. Only his second season as NFL quarterback. I don't think AR is going to live up to the hype. Houston's defense is too much. Let's take Houston. Green Bay against Jacksonville. Jacksonville is a step up above Carolina. Jacksonville, even though they got the win last weekend against New England, hasn't quite found their identity. Don't know who they are. They're playing soft. Jordan Love and the Packers take the win against Jacksonville. Arizona against the Dolphins. This will be a decent game. It's in Miami. Kyler Murray against, hopefully projected to be, Tua back at quarterback, according to Mike Daniels. So it's going to be interesting to see if Tua actually plays or not. If Tua doesn't play, it's going to Arizona. If Tua does play, I'm going to side with the Dolphins. But right now, let's give it to Arizona. The Jets against the Patriots at Foxborough. Look, the Jets have been on a downward spiral. They got to figure out how to get shit together. This is their second week with the newly added wide receiver, Davante Adams. Can they really keep spiraling? I don't know. It is in Foxborough. Let's give it to A-Rod and Davante Adams. Let's pick the Jets. The Falcons and the Buccaneers. Buccaneers lost last night to the Ravens. Old Kirk Cousins is on a hot streak down there in Atlanta, doing what he does no matter where he goes. DC, Minnesota, you name it. Man, it's going to be a good game. I know they're in Tampa Bay, but I'm going to go with Atlanta. The Eagles at the Bengals. Man, got to give them credit. The Eagles went in, did what they did, took the win last week, this past Sunday. Look, I'm not an Eagles fan. They're a divisional rival. I hate them just like I do the Giants and the Cowboys. But Cincinnati isn't playing the greatest ball right now either. If they can keep some kind of containment to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, it's going to go to the Eagles. Bengals haven't really been doing too well on defense. And look, let's be honest. If Philly can keep going with that offense they got with Saquon Barkley, A.J. Brown, and Devontae Smith, it's going to be a close one, but let's go with the Eagles. The Saints against the Chargers. Man, the Saints are in disarray. You got to go with Harbaugh and Herbert, Justin Herbert, going with the L.A. Chargers. Buffalo against Seattle. In Seattle, Buffalo making that cross-country trip for the afternoon 4:05 game. Josh Allen and company get it together with new wide receiver Amari Cooper, going with the Bills. Our game, 425. Is there even any reason to pick the Bears? Nope. It's DC. Washington Commanders are going to be over the Bears. Denver Broncos are actually going to be playing against the Carolina Panthers. Denver Broncos, we know what the Panthers are. Kansas City against Las Vegas Raiders. Always a good game, regardless of whether it's in KC or Las Vegas. This game's going to be in Las Vegas. Kansas City, even though they're undefeated, the last NFL undefeated football team, still hasn't figured it out. Travis Kelce still doesn't have any touchdowns as a tight end this year from Patrick Mahomes, but that's going to change this Sunday. As much as I hate to say it, the Chiefs are going to go 7-0. Sunday night game. Oh, wow. Whew. Dallas Cowboys against the San Francisco 49ers. All right. Brandon Ayuk tore his ACL, MCL on Sunday. Deebo Samuel was in the hospital with pneumonia yesterday and today. Brock Purdy threw 3 interceptions on Sunday. CMC's not back yet. I'm pretty sure George Kittle is the only guy playing offense. As much as it pains me to say this, and I know Paul Spencer's not watching, maybe he is, the Dallas Cowboys are going to figure out how to squeak something out on Sunday Night Football. Look, I get it. The Cowboys aren't that good this year. They haven't figured out how to play defense, and their offense is basically running in circles around the circus tent. But, for that offense of San Francisco, and Dre Greenlaw's out on defense, as well as another star-studded guy on the defensive side for San Francisco. I just don't see how they can keep up with playing right now. So, I'm going to give the nod to Dallas. The Monday night game is going to be the New York Giants at the Pittsburgh Steelers. Russell Wilson had a good performance this past Sunday, coming in as a starting quarterback for Steeltown. And man, New York Giants with Thomas out for the season at left tackle, Daniel Jones not knowing which way is up, out, or over under that $55 million contract that he got. And we don't know what's going to happen with Malik Neighbors and company. Pittsburgh's just going to be too much of a matchup against them, and Pittsburgh's going to take that victory at home at Three Rivers. So there you have it. We have the quick rundown of all things for week 8. As always, our next show will be next Tuesday, October 29th, 8:30 p.m. Same bat time, same bat channel. Give us a like, give us a follow, give us a subscribe at Out of the Box Sports Network. You can follow us there, you see on your screen, at Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. We have programming for every sports fan. Find your favorite team, find your favorite show, find your favorite sport. All NFC East teams are represented with a show. College football, Notre Dame, wrestling, you name it. Las Vegas Raiders have a show. Even though they got knocked out of the postseason, we have a show for the New York Mets as well. So we'll probably have a recap from Ken about the season for that coming up shortly as well. We got baseball as the World Series kicks off. If you'd like to start a show, have an idea, or want to do something about your favorite team, reach out to us, give us a message, hit us up on social media. We can get you to do what we do here every week. With that being said, we will see you next Tuesday. Same time, same place. Be a friend, tell a friend. Have a good night.